The first lesson we learn as Christians when we encounter other Christians is that we are united. Jesus talks about all Christians, all followers, being one. That when we become followers of Christ, each of us becomes united with Christ in spirit. And therefore, if each one of us is united to Christ in spirit, we're also united to each other. And Christ further calls us to love one another. The Spirit that lives inside you and me lives inside our Baptist colleagues, our Anglican colleagues, our Catholic colleagues, our Pentecostal colleagues, our Brethren colleagues, our Quaker colleagues. God's Spirit is in all these people's hearts. All we need to do is to begin to recognize that God is with them in the same way that God is with us. Can we do that? Can we accept that it is possible for God to speak to other people just as easily as God can speak to us? When we come together to worship God, what should our attitude be? When we come together with sisters and brothers from other denominations, other churches, what should our attitude be? Jesus, on the night he was to be betrayed, to die his death on the cross for each and every one of us, put a towel around his waist and washed his disciples' feet. Jesus served everyone around him. Jesus gave his life for all those who surrounded him, who came to him. Do we give our lives simply for the people we like or choose to live with? Or do we give our lives for all others, no matter what they believe, no matter how they live, no matter what attitude they may have towards us serving them? One of the areas where we have differences, one of the places where Christians who are united with Christ together in spirit have differences, is at the communion table. Are we precious about the way we celebrate communion? Does that stop others from sharing communion with us? Some of our differences over communion is spoken of a lot longer in a book by URC minister Donald Hilton entitled Table Talk. Let me simply give you a small taster. Donald begins by talking of the different names we use for communion: the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, communion, Mass, liturgy, sacrament, no name. Each of those names gives a different image, a different concept of what the holy meal that we share in means, what participating in that meal is all about. But in amongst the discussion that Donald Hilton has about what name we use for this meal, he points out that it's not only between churches that there are division, but also even within the churches themselves that our words and actions do not agree with each other. Denominational division in the church, he writes, is not the only point where, at the table, our actions deny the words we use. How can there be communion if people are scattered to the four corners of a largely empty church? Does a silent procession of believers from pew to altar table speak of community? Doesn't communion suggest a circle rather than rows, one loaf rather than myriad pieces, and conversation alongside silence? Words and actions should be true to each other. Do we need to look again, anyway, at how we are as a church, what we do together, how we work and live together, what this Christianity is all about, what it truly means to follow Jesus Christ? If we come together in a church building and do not sit with one another, what does that say to others who come into the church about how much love, care and concern we have for those around us? When was the last time you showed love to another person within your gathering of God's people? A church divided will not last very long, but a church united will, I believe, grow, will expand, will develop. Jesus showed us the way to behave, to serve, to give ourselves for those around us, and his words to those first disciples were that he was giving them a new commandment, that they should love one another. This is a new commandment that we need to share. Let us love one another.